Ms. Moore will give you the numbers and things like that. I just wanted to start by saying, specifically, Mr. McCall, we appreciate your comments. We appreciate the opportunity to talk to you a week or so ago, a couple of weeks ago maybe, and appreciate your comments about the difficulty of the time right now with, it appears, the economy turning south a little bit, probably for quite a long time. That gives us some concern, but it also gives individuals concern, and it's not necessarily time to increase taxes, is the bottom line. So I think you'll be pleased with what Ms. Moore tells you here in just a couple minutes. But a couple of things, I did want to address one thing, because I was just kind of piqued my curiosity. One thing that, a comment you made, Mr. McCall, was about our employees being paid a lot more than county employees. And I just was curious. So we did, Gloria called and got some salary schedules and things like that. And I know we've got some different types of employees that it's not an apples to apples comparison. So the county doesn't employ teachers. So there's really no way to compare a teacher salary to a county employee's. But we do have some groups of employees that have similar job responsibilities. And we looked at those, and it's not true that the school district's employees are much higher paid than the counties. They are very comparably paid. So I just wanted to just note that. Now, I do know that the health plan is different. It is true.
A lot better.
It is true, but I think the county could participate in the state health plan if it chose to, is my understanding. But anyway, but pay is comparable, and there's some differences too. County employees get vacation pay in addition to sick pay. School district does not get that. So there's some differences here or there, but when you just look at salary, it is very comparable for similar positions. So anyway, I just wanted to state that. And then the other thing, if you looked at saw anything about the school board last night, they approved, I guess, basically what we're gonna pitch to you today. But one thing I just want to bring out in the open, nothing's being done wrong. It is a change that I think needs to be just mentioned publicly, is the change in fee and lieu agreements that has happened over the last 2, 3, 4 years. Historically in Oconee County, anytime a fee and lieu agreement was signed, the fees were allocated the same way taxes were. So for every $100 in fee, they were allocated, basically 2/3, 1/3. I think that's an overgeneralization, but basically 2/3, 1/3 school district county. And here lately, the school district share of fees has been cut drastically. I think there were a few agreements that were, the school district, instead of the 2/3, went to the 1/3, and the county 2/3, divided, I think, between economic development and county expenditures. But here, I think some of the agreements, the school district was written to where it was 1% or something like that. So my understanding is that the next budget year, that's gonna cost the school district, if you wanna call it, maybe a loose use of that word, but it's gonna cost the school district about $200,000. But that $200,000 is gonna grow over the coming years as those fee agreements come online. And that really is just, again, from a historic perspective, it is just shifting money that would have been in the school district budget to the county budget. And then to make that up, the millage rate for the school district needs to go up, whereas the counties can go down a little bit. Again, I'm not saying anything's done wrong, because you have complete authority to write fee and lieu agreements the way you want to write them. You don't have to write the school district in at all. And I respect that. That's your right to write those the way they're written. However, when you look from a historic perspective, in the past, the school district was always a beneficiary of fee money, just like it was tax money. So that is a change that has a negative impact on the school district. But anyway, so those were just a couple of editorial comments before Ms. Moore gives you the numbers.
If y'all don't mind, I'm going to sit over here. Like it is, like you don't mind.
Not a bit. Make me clean.
You want me to click?
You have to point. It's right here. Oh, much better.
Okay, just a little update from the last time we were here. you all know, as we said before, our 1920 budget included a $2.8 million deficit. And my projections at the last time we met was that we would be about 2.4. But since that time, we have learned that the Duke Energy appeal was partially resolved, and we expect to get another $2 million of revenue from that resolution. And that's great news for us because that changes those projections so that now our deficit for this school year will be closer to $750,000. So our use of our fund balance for this year would still allow us to keep within our policy, our board policy. So that's just a little update. Still have some concerns about the economy. What did the COVID-19 closures do to our state revenues? How long will the economy take to rebound? And we know that the school district nor the county will have any information in time to adopt a budget before millage is set and the tax bills have to go out because the legislature's going back in September. So still concerned about those things. However, we are asking you to maintain our level of revenue for next year at the same dollar amount or whatever the same millage brings. So if the value of mill goes up and the millage stays the same, we would get a little more revenue, just like we've talked about for the last several years. So this total number is slightly different from last year's, and that is because of the state tax reimbursement for Tier 3 money. And we would still need to use $2.4 million of our fund balance next year. So basically, we're just pushing that deficit from this year to next year, which is what the legislature's doing. It went by there saying we're going to have the same budget next year. So we're basically saying the same thing. And then this is just a little update of the fund balance. Estimated for the 2020 year, our fund balance would be $22,300,000. And then for the 2021 year, if our budget were to stay as presented, we'd have a $19.9 million fund balance. That's about 18% of our expenditures. So I did bring a handout for y'all. It's just a summary of our budget. Expenditures are not changing next year. At this point, we have exactly the same expenditures as we did in 1920 year. So.
Can we go back one slide real quick? I just want to make sure. So on this slide, the 48,290,555 is the exact same dollar figure that was approved last year. The 19 changed because Tier 3 money actually went up a little bit from the current year we're in to what's projected for next year. So that caused the 67 number to go up slightly as well. But the county part of that, that's just the way the state makes us do our request to county council, is the 67 is what we're requesting. But the 19 is what that whole Act 388 thing did when they did the extra penny sales tax. Instead of that being owner-occupied homes, now that comes from the sales tax from the state. So that's what was changed from the current budget year to the one we're asking for next year. Is that so? But then further, we would ask for that 48,290,555 coming from the local county government, which is the same dollar figure as last year. But if the value of a mill grows, we would love for the millage levy to be left the same, because that would, again, allow us to reduce parts of that $2.4 million. And the board has instructed, our school board has instructed us to do as much as we can on the expenditure side to reduce that $2.4 million as well. We certainly understand there are two different ways to battle a budget deficit. You can increase revenues, but you can also decrease expenditures. So they're working with us. We've already identified a few things that we're doing or going to try to do over the next couple of months to reduce our expenditure budget to bring that number down as well. But we've already hired teachers for next year, so it's going to be difficult to come up with the entire 2.4. So anything, the growth of a mill, the value of a mill, if that does grow, that would help us with that 2.4 million budget deficit that we're looking at. Thanks.
I have a question. So the partial resolution of the Duke appeal, how does that impact the 2021 budget revenue?
That's not a question that I can answer, because they have the right again next year to file another appeal, as far as I know. So I can't really answer that. Ms. Hubbard, you could certainly answer.
Speaking a little bit on the fee in lieu of, and the reason for the change, it was never the intent to write the school district out of any fee in lieu of. The biggest concern that I had was if the county's getting the smaller portion of it, and I know some counties that give the school district 1% or no percent, which I completely disagree with. The effort that I had in that part was to ensure that we were able to continue to invest on the economic development side moving forward. So we were all, number one, continuing to have growing industry in here, which we are doing that, continuing to make those investments in economic development, which we are continuing to do that. So for the betterment of all of our, education and our kids coming out, that we have a place for them to actually work in Oconee County. And I know we talk about the low numbers of unemployment in Oconee County now is a little bit of a bubble because of what has happened in the economy. But for what I see the county continuing to do is we are growing that median income so our kids can come home and work here. So because I felt like a lot of times those jobs didn't exist for kids coming out of high school and college. And I think it speaks volumes to the education that our kids are getting in Oconee County and with Tri-County Tech, and now call it the college degrees, 4-year college degrees, have a place to come and grow their family here. So I just want to, as a person that graduated from Oconee County, I'm very pleased with the education that our kids are getting, that my kids are getting moving forward. I'm very impressed with the teachers and administration. So as we see a lot of these fee and lieu ofs come on, I'll go back and look at that, but I can't think, unless it was possibly which one that there may have been a 1% written out of there, but I'll be glad to go back. But that I'm not in favor of that, and I will not put a fee in lieu of to where the school district gets zero, because that was not the intent of that, and I will not vote on that. And I think as we continue to move forward with that, the investments that we're making in sewer and everything like that, it will continue to grow that on the industry side of things. And, as we're getting more houses around here, there's been a lot of popularity, especially in the Walhalla area with the new school, and the homes going up around that area. So, I think everything's trending in the right direction. I think we've made some great investment with tax dollars, and I hope to continue to see that millage go up. So what mill basis did y'all use for your budget?
We just used the exact same numbers from last year, exact same dollar amount.
You know what the
Value of mill from last year, I think it was like 404.
Yeah, 402, 404.
For an operational mill.
you know what
Yes.
that estimate would be for them? Do we have an
I
idea?
don't. That would be something I would have to get with Christie on.
Yeah.
Okay.
We need to make sure that when we put a number out there, that it can
Yes.
be followed back on in a correct and consistent manner.
And when we check with Christie, also ask about this Duke appeal, what effect that has on this coming year.
We've already asked that question. We'll know more early June on that.
Okay.
Now, the manufacturer's exemption is still out, so there's still one outstanding there. This was just a basic property purchase appeal. And if I'm not mistaken, they won't be able to file that because that notice has already gone out for this year and they were already under an appeal period. But I'd like to verify that before putting that as a solid on the record.
Okay, good.
It's just very early in the year, a lot of uncertainties, especially for Ms. Hubbard, knowing that, this year's everything's been different with the boats and motors having to be taxed and calculated separately. We know now that the property tax portion, we'll set that date in September, but we'll be I don't want to say uncertain until then, but I don't think we'll be able to hit any nail on the head precisely until early September.
And I certainly wasn't trying to imply that there's anything wrong with fee and lieu. Again, y'all have the authority. I'm not even necessarily expressing disagreement. It is just a change. You know, in the past, fee and lieu were always divided the same way taxes were, and they're no longer being divided that way, so it's a difference. So it, you know, probably within 3 or 4 years, it's gonna be a mill's worth of difference for our tax levy. But again, y'all's authority to do that, and I'm not fussing about it, I just wanted it pointed out.
Any other comments? I just want to thank the school district and the school board for realizing that this is hard times for our citizens as our businesses try to reopen and as our citizens try to get back to the new normal, whatever that is. So I appreciate that, and since there's no time for additional tax burden, so thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Next order of business is the discussion of the Oconee County proposed budget for next year. Ms. Brock?
Mr. Chairman and members of council and the Budget and Finance Committee, we have before you 2 different packets. One is a brief summary, which is the PowerPoint presentation to be stapled. The other is your line item administrator's recommended budget book, and this one is bound. The first couple pages of your book, I think it's actually page 2, you'll see a sheet that looks very familiar to you from the previous budget administration meeting that we had where we first introduced the proposed budget for this year. I'll give you just a moment to get there while we go through the PowerPoint, but these 2 things kind of coincide to let you know the differences in the current year's budget and the proposed budget for FY ending 2021. Let me get my clicker away. So we're going to go over the vision and mission statements for Oconee County, just as a reminder of why we're here and what we envision ourselves doing over the period of the years ahead. Oconee County, a diverse, growing, safe, vibrant community guided by rural traditions and shaped by natural beauty, where employment, education, and recreation offer a rich quality of life for all generations, both today and tomorrow. And our mission statement reads, "It is the mission of Oconee County to provide our current and future citizens and visitors quality services while protecting our communities, heritage, environment, and natural resources in an ever-changing world." And the reason I wanted to read those out loud is to put emphasis on the ever-changing world part of this. As you all know, things have changed drastically over the last several months, and there is no reason to believe that we won't be facing additional changes as we navigate through the remainder of the year in uncertainty as this fall and winter months approach toward the end of the year, which will be in the middle of the fiscal year that we'll be discussing here for our budget. So some of the changes that we have built in here are some contingencies. The budget document that I showed you 2 weeks ago has only a few minor changes, but we have reduced the difference in this current year's budget to the next year's budget, which would be the FY 2021 budget. After producing the documents here, we had some discussion within the office because it seems that $4 million is an increase, which must, in some people's mind, indicate that there is a tax increase. I want to ensure you and the public there is 0 tax increase included in this budget. Once we go through the document here, we'll be able to break down the increase in revenues and how we have under-calculated, especially this year, some of the fees and other revenue items that we have underestimated for this year. Prior to the meeting started, I made a statement to Mr. McCall and Mr. Kane that we have endured a lot of growth over the years, and we could see the growth happening, and we've endured the what are we going to do. We're finally realizing a moment of that growth coming to fruition, and we were not prepared for some of the growth in a revenue standpoint, but now that we know the kind of revenue that is coming toward us, we will be able to better prepare for that and not have such a gap in what our estimation is going to be in the future. On your PowerPoint, can y'all see on your screens exactly what we're looking at here? So this is just a summary of revenues over the last 3 years and the projections for the FY 2021 budget coming up. If you look in FY 18, which is that first block there on your left, you'll see that our expenditures exceeded our revenues by quite a bit. That is not what we want to do in a budget. If you look in actual figures for 2019, you'll see that that came a little bit closer in as 19 started to bring some of the explosive growth the county started to experience during that time. This year's revenues are estimated to be about equal, but I'm going to come out on a limb and say I have a feeling that we'll be under on our expenditures and our revenues will be slightly over. I believe that doing conservative budgeting is better for the county, but I also want to reiterate that we do try our best not to have an excess of any kind, whether that comes to the revenues or expenditures, that a balanced budget is more of what we have in mind. And 2021, again, the shocker part, because it does appear that the $4 million is a significant increase. Now, $4 million is a significant increase, but if you drove around this county and looked at the changes within this county, you would also see where that significant increase is coming from. This county has changed significantly in the past several years, and we are realizing that now in a monetary fashion. On the general fund revenues, which is it's on your screen here in front of you now, this is a breakdown of where we receive the revenues in the county. I'm gonna flip to a page over here because I've got some handwritten notes. So we go down through this, you'll see that the actual tax recommended for 2021, which is the top line there, is simply 1.3 million more. That is an increase in the tax base for Oconee County and the assessed value. That would include all of the new structures that were permitted. That includes new businesses and developments that have opened. This is not a tax increase. This is in no way saying that we believe that there's going to be more taxes being paid. This is simply a mathematical way of us measuring how much tax payments are going to be on the current assessed value for the county. And on that, we have determined or estimated our mill to be exactly the same as it was for this current fiscal year. We believe the value of that mill is to be the same. So there will be no mill increase either. There won't be any reason for an increase. This is just a more accurate realization of the dollar figures that we have been able to calculate and a closer calculation in our estimation of the actual revenues we'll be bringing in. The intergovernmental here, you'll see that we made a decrease here. After we had our last budget meeting, we sat down and brainstormed. We do have some emails from the state. We know that since there have been closures within governments, especially at the state level, some of our reimbursements may be slow or low in coming. So we did make the reduction in the local government fund, and we won't know the state's commitment to that until things get a little more close to normal. But to be conservative in that and make sure that we did not overestimate the revenues coming in, we did make that reduction there. You'll also see a significant increase from FY 20 to 21 on the bottom line where it says other financing sources. This is where the Oconee County Rock Quarry has come to fruition for us. 3 years ago, we challenged the rock quarry and to amp up the transfer into the local government so that the tax burden on our citizens and businesses would never have to necessitate the operational part of the quarry. This is the first year that we have done a $1 million transfer without any negative impact to the quarry. Our expenditures, as you see, have fluctuated here and there. Don't want to go through these line item by line item. We most certainly can, but I'll just do the highlights unless you prefer otherwise in any way. You'll see the general government, the increase of $481,000. That's a very small increase for the general government functions. Some of those are contractual increases. Some of those are buying small equipment, contracts for GIS services, printing services, those sorts of things. I mean, the functional part or the administrative function of government. You'll also see here a $2.3 million increase in the public safety. Didn't want there to be any red flags there. This is for the lease payments for the 6 new fire trucks and the additional purchase of the fire truck, where we recently went through the budget reading for the refinancing of the bond. That will be included in that. Public Works is being increased this year as well. We had a couple of capital improvements that we had spoken about at the last meeting, and we'll go over those again just to make sure everyone's on the same page. I just want to let you know where the increases were and what they mean to this county. We did make some cuts as well. Position was determined not to be necessary in the Economic Development Office at this time. So there was a lower there in health and welfare. Because some of the services provided by the state are now more fully being funded by the state, some of the burden for the local government to fund state mandated offices here has decreased over time. Questions so far? All right, so this one is entitled The General Fund, Other Financing Sources/Uses. As you all know, we developed the 2 mil capital vehicle and equipment fund last year. We'll start to develop sales plans for some of that. Oconee County sits on quite a bit of property. We've had some interest in alleviating ourselves of some of our properties. This estimation may appear high to you, however, I do feel it is very conservative for what we're looking at ahead. And you'll see here on the bottom here for the transfers in, this is the 3rd year in a row that we would not be doing any sort of transfers from any other fund other than the Rock Quarry Fund, which is what it was intended to do, to balance the budget in a way that does not increase the standard or lower the funds of the balances of any of the other additional funds. In years past, we had also done some transfers out. Some of this is to cover essential services for the sheriffs and solicitors' victim services funds. And last year, of course, we established the capital vehicle and equipment replacement fund, utilizing $275,000 to establish that base for that fund, and that won't be necessary for this year either. So it does appear there are cuts on that bottom, but I just want to let you know those things have balanced out and there was no significant cut to any service in the county made. And we're going to move on now to our special revenue funds. We do have the Emergency Services Fund, which is 2.9 mils. The Sheriff's Victims Assistance Fund, which is a designated fund for victims assistance through the Sheriff's Program by state order. The Solicitor's Victims Assistance Fund, which is also a state-offered plan and county-funded in part. Those are both for staff only. Actually, there's salaries and benefits on those, correct? There are benefits included on those. The 911 Communications Fund, which is a variety of sources for a funding mechanism for our E911 Center and capital upgrades for that. Our Tri-County Technical College Fund, which is an even 3 mils, and the Road Maintenance Fund, which is 2.1 mils. The Emergency Services Fund, as you all know, was established several years ago as a means for the county to provide for equipment and training to the 17 rural independent fire districts in Oconee County. That is significantly what we spend all of that money on. It is for station equipment, trainings. This year, we'll be evaluating and changing out air packs. There's a lot of training opportunities coming up because a lot of the training that we had scheduled over the last month, of course, we have not been able to conduct because of the COVID-19, the tornado, and the pandemic response as an emergency services function of the county. So we are spending just a tad more than we had planned on spending for the upcoming year, but because this fund is a rolling fund, this year's fund balance will increase because of that. For the Sheriff's Victim Services Fund, this one is one of those that kind of basically stays the same. As long as the funding mechanism and the expenditures stay pretty close together, this is not of a concern to us. They do carry a small fund balance of $1,485. And this, again, is to cover the salaries and the fringe benefits for the victims' assistance. And the same goes for the solicitor's victims assistance. It's identical to the sheriff's assistance. I believe actually they do share some funding sources. And again, this is for salaries and fringe for victims of crimes for the solicitor's office. For our 911 communications fund this year, we do receive a lot of the funding here through 911 surcharges. We get some money back from the state. The money from the state, as with the other monies from the state aid to subdivisions, we know will be slow coming in this year, but because this fund is $1 million strong and the expenditures are only going to be $984, we feel like we're safe to move ahead with the purchases and do the upgrades for the 911 Communications Center. And the Tri-County Technical College Fund, this one's actually building up a little bit of a fund balance here. And we're not in that same meeting. I was going to do the 3 mills. In one of our ordinances, it does say it's 3.5 mills, but that's incorrect. We'll fix that at the council meeting, but it is 3 mills even. So we have, of course, honored their request this year. This is a fund that is well worthwhile. This is the first year that we've done upgrades at the Pendleton campus and had OITP campus here at the same time. So this is very good for us to be able to share the wealth in this fund that was originally established for this fund and see the fruition of this campus coming alive here at Oconee County. The Road Maintenance Fund, this is a 1 mil fund. There are times where I have made notes to come speak to you, and maybe in coming years we'll have to do this. It may be time for us to up the millage amount on the road maintenance fund. We have an adequate fund balance in here right now. We have an adequate fund balance, but maintenance on roads is increasingly more expensive. And we have to build up such a large fund balance for us to make our project list that by the time we get there, it's like, oh, well, we need 300 more thousand. So we may want to move some points of mills around in future years. I don't want that number in the fund balance to lead you in any way to believe that we are not doing road maintenance. We are. But to do the jobs that we need to do with the fund that was established here, you have to wait a certain number of years for that balance to add up. Our capital project funds are the Economic Development Fund. And as you all know, you added mills to that last year for us to include the hospitality capital in the Destination Oconee plan into the Economic Development mill, because in fact tourism is an industry in Oconee County. So the millage went up to 2.4 mills. The Bridges and Culvert Fund, that's another mill. And the brand new Capital Vehicle Equipment and Replacement Fund. So for the first time this year, we're gonna, let's see, for the Economic Development Fund, we have listed out on the bottom here, and you'll see the very bottom, just before the estimated balance, is the sewer/OJRSA. We put the $500,000 for that fund in here. We all know that the sewer line going down to the Golden Corner Commerce Park does not actively have a customer on it at this time. That line has been in the ground for some period of time. I want to assure you all that I do not anticipate spending all $500,000. I do not anticipate that. This is a rolling fund, so if it's not spent, it doesn't end on June 30th. It will go back on July 1st. It is it's a rolling fund. It's designated millage for that purpose. The reason I put that line item in this year was in years to come, we would have a line item. So when we're talking about sewer in Oconee County, there won't be a question mark for you as a council or anyone who precedes you as a council to say, well, where will we get the money? Sewer is an economic development driver. It belongs in economic development, and throughout the county, it has not been adequately funded after the swag agreements and all of that. That's a historical moment we don't have to get into. But I do want you all to see that we, as a county, and I know that you all are okay with it because we've had meetings for over a year now, that we need to fund this sewer in Oconee County, especially in the southern portion of the county. So the expenditures here for the OJRSA, once we get into the financial side on the documents, we'll be able to break down those costs for you and say, okay, this costs this money to get here, this costs this money to get here, this costs this money to get here. The idea here was just to set up sort of a master idea that we're going to have to pay for sewer expansion and sewer upgrades in Oconee County that are outside of the municipal limits of the cities. Additionally, last month, and we didn't include it in this because it wasn't coded at the time, about 6 weeks ago, Oconee County Council did give us permission to assist the city of Westminster in doing a water infrastructure study. Since then, we did receive an invoice for $14,000. It was an amount not to exceed $50,000. That is not on this sheet, but by the time we update the next time, they'll be in this document for you to see. It does not change the fund balance, but $14,000, but the $210,000 for Salem remains, and the Walhalla Westminster interconnection for the water line over there at OITP, that remains as well, even though some of those funds have been expended. The Bridges and Culverts Fund, another one where you look at the fund balance and it seems extravagant, but if any of you have been here to see what we spend when we actually do get the opportunity to replace bridges and large culverts, Duck Pond was one, it's quite an expense. This is another one of those funds where we'd love to be able to tell you exactly what we're going to do for the next year, and we do hope to have some resolution going through mitigation with FEMA over Cobb Bridge. That's one of our remainings that's still out very soon, and any of the funding that required up front that while we await FEMA reimbursement will come out of this fund. And our capital vehicle and equipment replacement fund. You see, this one doesn't have a fund balance. We had a lot of fun with this account. And when I say fun, I would like to let you know that fun to these guys is getting a piece of equipment that does exactly what it's supposed to do without breaking. Fun to them means they can go cut grass without worrying about a blade flying off or a hydraulic hose busting because the equipment's so old. Fun to some of these guys is driving a truck that they're not worried will break down, get stuck in the mud, or have to be towed out. So for this fund, it's going to take some time to build up a fund balance. It's going to take considerable time because, as you were told last year, we have not done an adequate job replacing equipment and vehicles. I do want to share with you, though, and I know that all of you remember this from last year because it was one of those things we went over and over and over. But because of your generous passage of this fund, every single piece of equipment on all 3 of these pages was successfully purchased, and I think you got the very last one. Is there one coming up tonight? Yeah, there's one coming up tonight. So this has been a blessing for the county and for the employees and for our citizens. The efficiencies that we have created by having good equipment has been incredible. There are places in this budget and you can take this book home, obviously, flip through it, do whatever you'd like, but you'll see places where we lowered vehicle maintenance and lowered gasoline and lowered diesel just because the equipment's that much better. So I really want to say thank you for that one, and you're not going to see a fund balance develop in this account for quite some time because we've got years to catch up to. And the enterprise fund, as you all know, I did request for us to have an in-depth meeting regarding the rock quarry on June 2nd. So I'm just going to do a budget overview here as we get into this. There are 2 significant things I do want to point out, though. One is the addition of an employee. The rock quarry has operated with 19 people and technically lost a person when we lost the assistant administrator, deputy administrator. So I feel like in some ways they need another equipment operator out there. We need boots on the ground to operate the equipment to keep it running 24, well, as long as they can throughout the course of the day. And you'll see that it does not have a negative impact on the revenue they're bringing in. And the more revenue we're bringing in, the more hours that we're working. When you look at overtime, bringing in another person only makes sense for the rock quarry. The second thing for the rock quarry is the professional services here. There was an increase in a line item here. It was a last minute increase. It was not in anything I had given you 2 weeks ago to look at. This increase is due to the fact that with the purchase and the gradual expansion of the rock quarry with the 54 acres and 10 parcel, yes. It's time for us to develop a new site plan and a future plan for blasting and benching and benchmarks and walls coming, and actually have a couple of rocks in my office for you, Wayne. Don't let me forget to give it to you. So that is for a professional service, for us to go out and get an engineer to help us lay out the plan. As you all know, the rock quarry is built like this, and it's sort of an upside-down pyramid and kind of steps. We're getting to the point where our pyramid is getting very, very, very difficult, and we've got a curve to go around, and we've got some inconsistencies on one time. We need to know where we're going, because as fast as we're going through the plans that we have now, we're going to be 4 years in our 5-year plan in 2 years. So I feel like that is something, I had planned on putting in the budget next year, but it really needs to be done this year. And it's worth the cost. It's a plan. As long as we follow that plan and be careful to do our benchmarking correctly and make sure that we maintain our 30 feet in height distance there. One other increase for the rock quarry, I know I'm boring y'all to death, and tell me if I'm talking too fast, is the blasting, because we do have certain limitations on how much we can blast at one time, and because we're making so much rock, we're gonna have to blast more often than we are now, and that's just, it's growing pains. It doesn't hurt us at all, it helps us make more profits, but the blasting is going up, just a little bit there, and yeah, $50,000 increase, I believe. I thought I put in 65. As quickly as we're moving around the quarry and as quickly as we're getting the stone out of the way, we're just having to blast quicker and quicker and quicker. Oh, the rock quarry fund here do, and just for a note there, all of the expenditures here do cover the lease payments on the equipment, on the new equipment. There was no change there. And this is the debt service fund. This one is at 3 mills. And this, as you know, is for the lease, capital lease, bond, and other payments that the county is indebted when we take out any sort of financing that we pay through this fund. This fund actually is sitting on a nice fund balance right now. And we did refinance the 2011 bonds here a while back. And we do have a couple of more bonds on our sheet that we'll probably be discussing throughout the course of this year. We do have some projects that were on wish lists that were not funded, but it won't limit the bonding capacity for Oconee County. And this is one of those funds that I believe is a rainy day fund for us in the event that we should have to incur any kind of debt. Had we had to take out debt for, God forbid, the cybersecurity day, or if there was a mass response for the COVID-19 that we had to this would be one of the places where we wouldn't have to scratch our heads or wonder or cut services. This is one of those things, as a debt service fund, if we had to incur any kind of debt, that we would know that we had the ability to make those payments back. So that's the PowerPoint portion. Any questions here? Comments?
On the rock quarry discussion in June, can you also talk about the charges that we charge our customers,
Yes.
and to make a distinction about how many customers we have that are in Oconee County versus how many customers we have?
I don't know if I can get that data right away, but I can get pretty close, I think, based on the zip, if they have an account with us. Cash payers may be a little bit more difficult for me to obtain on that short period.
And I don't want to affect the charge at all to what we're charging our Oconee County businesses, but I do want to look at possibly increasing the fees to non-county businesses, especially if they're hundreds of miles away.
Yes. I will most certainly do that.
And let me also just go say it again so that the public knows, there's no additional tax burden with this budget.
None.
Thank you.
None. And as far as we foresee, no need for a mill increase.
Thank you.
Since we have gone through the PowerPoint, I do want to take one more moment. I hate to beat y'all over the head with this, I'm really sorry. But we haven't had a normal budget season this year, and because we have not necessarily had a public here for input. I know we have the Zoom calls, I know we're on YouTube, and I know we have that, but I'd really like just one more time to go over this sheet, the summary sheet that I gave y'all. And I'll go as quick or as slow as you'd like. There are very few changes on it from 2 weeks ago when it was first presented to you. There are some minor adjustments we made. I do want to individually list out a couple of things so that they're verbal and on the record, if that's okay with y'all. So we did have some capital item requests this year, and some of these are unavoidable. We'll start from the bottom, actually, because that one is one of those places where I want to talk to y'all about what kind of staff we have before we get down to the new position request. So I'm going to go from the bottom up on the capitals. So we have two, yes, sir?
What page?
That's right.
It'll be the second page in your bound book, directly after this page. That good?
Yeah, I got it.
I should have put that one on the PowerPoint, I'm sorry. So the two retention ponds that we need at the solid waste complex, we originally thought, okay, we'll just get a couple quotes for them and, it'll be for budget purposes, is what we told them. There'll be no math, no schematics to it. We just need them for budget purposes. We won't need any specifics. So when the budget for them came back at $724,000, I said, oh my, hey Kyle, can you please help with solid waste? So I want y'all to know that by us doing it in-house, we have saved more than $500,000. This is through the expertise of staff and the equipment that we're allowed to purchase with this special fund for that. The compactors, and I hate that Mr. McCall just left because this is something that Mr. McCall had put in his budget for last year, and I believe this year we did buy 3. Did we buy 3 this year?
Yes.
Yes, with some allocated funding for capital that was not expended because the compactors were for the solid waste capital.
Do you want to wait on him to come back in?
He's not gonna be back. I mean, he will for the meeting. He had somewhere he had to be at 5:30.
Okay, sorry. Didn't know if he went to the bathroom or something, so.
And the transfer station repairs. So these three bottom items here, as much as we talk about the importance of our solid waste and recycling plan, we have not funded an adequate means for us to manage our solid waste and recycling. You'll also see, this will be a repetitive thing, I'm gonna go at the bottom of the page, again with the solid waste and recycling, because we have not been realistic in the past about the revenue that we receive from and the expenditures we send to the tipping fees line item. Going forward, the fire truck, this is one where the remainder of the funds came from us doing the refinance on the bond. So that money will roll over, and that fire truck, as our commitment was to fund one truck a year and do the rolling leases every 4 years or so. So that is a commitment there. And of course, the top two here, the communications and the information technology, as we are encouraging and continue to encourage our citizens and ourselves to utilize our online services and in-house electronic means rather than visiting or paper even. I stay with 5 trees in front of me and notebooks. Those are security efforts that will just continue. Those will, at some point, become a normal annual expenditure for us. It appears that it's a capital request right now, but I think over time, we're gonna start seeing those as a more normal annual expenditure, just as we keep increasing our security and safety. So the lease purchase for the fire truck payment is in this increase in amount. The new position request, I did really want to go over these with y'all, but I don't know if y'all want me to go through all of these. I do want to say, out of the ones that here are on this sheet, we met with each and every single office that had position requests, and this is the position request for this year. We found that increasing some efficiencies and changing some of our positions and systems in place, that there were better ways for us to utilize some of our money and better means for us to serve the public. One of those was us doing the increase for the firewall. There are certain things that you can do online that we can consistently do online without having another person come in. We can have data plans put in, we can have all sorts of things, and that's something we will be continuing to explore in the future. And it is not that I wish any person in Oconee County to be replaced by a computer or a robot or anything else, but we can increase efficiencies without increasing the footprint of the employees that are needed to do the job adequately. For this building in particular, adding people in offices was a very, very difficult challenge in some ways, even as before COVID came around. But as you all know, all of you have been in my office, if we had to put another person in my office, we would be in violation of the 6 foot. And there are several offices in this building that just can't house another person adequately and still maintain social distancing and safety. So you'll see the top 4 or 5 positions here in the new position request. One is a sheriff's deputy, 2 dispatchers and communications, and a detention correctional officer. Those are positions that have been over the years requested by the sheriff. I actually went back for 3 or 4 years and looked. Dispatchers for the 911 communication center, they're necessary. We have to have them. We have more people, we have more calls. We absolutely have to have dispatchers. And as I'm speaking to you about these, there's something I would like for you all to do, though, is go ahead and take a look at the new position request, and as you're going through your book, I know you're gonna be spending a lot of time with your book, look at the departments that have made the request and look at the overtime from this year to last. And I hope that you'll see a clear picture on how we can make some reductions in overtime and allow people to work at the county and still enjoy some time off while being here. The salary increases, I do want to go over this one as well. The $1,500 was the number I told Mr. Elliott when we met, what was that, Monday? Yesterday. It doesn't feel like yesterday, does it? I played with this, how to do this. I told you all that I was looking at the Say Essential, Pay Essential. Our essential workers range in pay from here to here. The years of service range from here to here. Their ages range from here to here. There is no one size fits all when it comes to paying our staff. What did seem the fairest was that everybody has an evaluation turned in. Everybody, upon a good evaluation, gets the $1,500. Because essentially what that would mean is a higher percentage for someone that's on the lower end of the pay spectrum and a lower percentage for someone who is on the higher end of that pay spectrum. But there's, excuse me, still being an adequate increase to show the appreciation for the service and the work that the employees have done. For those staff members who did not receive positive evaluations, they will receive a certain percentage up front, and then they will have 6 months to correct the behavior or pattern of behaviors that caused the poor evaluation in the first place. After 6 months, if that staff member does not straighten up or redeem themselves or whatever qualities were deemed for them to be unsatisfactory by their supervisor, that money I would like to put back in just the general fund for it to be rolled over to fund balance for the previous year. For any expended non-salary uses, I don't see any reason for everyone to get $1,500 if they didn't get a good evaluation. The $1,500 is or is not included in the new positions.
It is not in the new positions.
So those, we'll need to add those in. Just train of thought there. And the miscellaneous amendments on the bottom, again, I'm repeating myself, but I want to make sure that everyone understands this clearly and collectively. So the vacancy savings, the first 2 numbers that you see there, both of them are $225,000. The vacancy savings was something that we did in prior years. For instance, if we posted or approved 6 positions in the sheriff's office, or 6 positions, not just in the sheriff's office, but sheriff communication, detention, or anywhere else, the savings recouped, because not all 6 could be posted, hired, and trained all at one time, there would be about a $200,000 savings throughout that first year period. So we have found that that savings is not actualized anymore because of the hiring being kind of more leveled out now. Now, there may be some savings in the communications with 2 dispatchers, but it'll be less than $100,000, and that's not enough to bank on to change a budget figure on. The direct aid for the ambulance service, again, for years and years and years. We have paid OMH, OMC, now Prisma, $150,000 a year to operate more than 5 ambulances in Oconee County. And they are very interested in continuing to serve Oconee County and the ambulance service through EMS, but we have to adequately fund them to do that. I think over the past 18 months or so, the partnership with the county and the hospital has changed a lot for the better, and the working relationship that we have with our paramedics and the EMS guys that are working on the street hand in hand has vastly improved. But this increase has, honest it surprises me that this hasn't been done in the past. I went and looked, maybe, we looked 8 years back, it was $150,000, and our population has grown by more than 10,000 in that time. It's time we pay for the ambulance service. And the solid waste tipping fee increase. This was another one where, I had said earlier, this is a place where we do collect more money from our commercial and industrial haulers to pay us tipping fees, so we're seeing a little more revenue there. But we've underestimated what we've been paying in the previous year's budgets by what we're sending to Homer, Georgia. And I do want to say, there's not a price increase there. It goes by CPI, and we have a contract with Waste Management, and that's including the hauling, and it's a cost per ton. There has not been a significant increase there, but the significant increase has been in the amount of household garbage and MSW that we are handling through the transfer station. So again, the difference is the 4.04, $693. Want to make sure, again, that everyone understands that is not a tax increase. The actual property tax increase, the value in property taxation is less than 1.3 million. If you'll look on page 3 of your book, you'll see the general fund summary and expenditure summary. Where you look at the top, you'll see one of the larger increases there. And this is an adjustment for corrective mathematics. We're not actually making the increases themselves, this is an adjustment. For license, permitting, and fees, that's where I was telling you the building codes. The tipping fees, register of deeds, the charges for services. We're looking at some increases in jet fuel simply because the number of jets. And COVID may reduce the number of general aviation, AKA, hobby pilots or sports pilots, but it's not going to reduce the corporate pilots and the larger jets. And the Jet A is one of the places where our revenue over the years has continued to increase on a slow and steady and comfortable rate. Again, we did look at the fact that there may or may not be sports activities here in the county. We did take into account that there may be a limited number of air traffic for Clemson home football games. I made adjustments accordingly, and I still feel 90% sure we are well on our mark here. Clemson football weekends normally are smaller aircraft. The margin for fuel, because the airport is so busy, we don't sell as much fuel as we would like to sometimes on Clemson football weekends. Now, we do anticipate a minor decrease, 4 to 6%, somewhere in there, and that is accounted for in this budget. But I don't see us taking a 20% decrease. I think the places where we're going to see decreases probably will be in where we have heads and beds. I think we'll see some decreases probably in our ATAX collections and accommodations. But as far as our general operations, I don't know that we'll be significantly impacted. I'm going to knock on wood and hope. And again, the use of fund balance, again, this year is 0. I just want to be clear too that the FY20 budget, the use of the fund balance there on the bottom that was for the establishment of the capital vehicle and replacement plan. That is not the use of the fund balance for any part of county operations or general government. Y'all want to go through the whole book, or you want me to stop?
Somebody's preference.
I'm happy. I've been through the whole book.
Lynn, you follow? I think we're good, thank you.
No questions? I got more thorough this year, didn't I?
Going back to the presentation, there was one section that I was curious about. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I'll find it up here as well. Oh, no, I can't.
Unless it's in here somewhere, is there a way to break out these general fund expenditure increases? Like, not right now, but just for future reference. You mentioned like these contracts are going up and
Yes.
things like that. Could
So
you
you're
just-
on page 8?
Probably, yes.
The general
Probably
fund
7 and 8.
expenditures,
7 and 8.
7 and 8?
If you could just, not right now, but just at some point.
No, hold on, I'll give you the page number. If you look on page 3,
Okay,
If you'll just put a tab on page 3, that covers page 7.
okay.
And if you look on page, or halfway down on page 3 in your book, that covers a portion of page 8.
Sorry, where are you talking about?
In your book, if you look on page 3, there's some summary pages that outline.
On there, okay.
The general. So as you go through the book, when you see the property tax and intergovernmental, I can send you the details on those. But typically what happens there is for like the fines and forfeitures, you'll see those in the revenue sources in the fee schedule and what our anticipations are gonna be. I'd love to say this is exactly as it is in the book, but there are cross-references everywhere.
Okay.
I think that we could supply that information
If it-
relatively easily.
Well, if it's
In a
gonna take a
format
lot
that
of
would
work,
not
don't
be
worry about it.
confusing.
It just,
We can do that.
no, it's
On
fine.
page 4.
Don't worry about it.
The next page, you've got each department
Yes.
listed. I can run this and do a column that shows you
The
difference
in amount? Okay, if you'll turn,
It's okay.
in,
Don't
no,
worry about it.
I don't, well, maybe somebody else wants to know. But if you'll all turn in your books here to page 4 and 5, yours won't be highlighted, mine's highlighted because I was doing math. In your bound book, turn to page 4 and 5. So you see the department by function, which is like the second large blue box down on your left. You know, it says general government. So that is your general government on page 8. That shows your expenditures.
When you say general government on page 8, you talking about the book or the presentation? Sorry.
No. Can I walk up there?
Sure.
So what this is a general category, like here, where it says general government. You'll turn to page 4 in your book here. Book.
My page 8 is different than your page 8.
Oh my,
That might explain why I was having trouble.
I kept my old one. Sorry to shoot me.
Okay.
I made them anything, but I wanted my notes in
That's
mine.
fine.
But if you go the ones that go to
Okay.
general government,
Which is,
go to page 4
okay.
in
right
your
here.
book.
Yep.
So each one of the categories here is listed
My
there.
page 4 is different than your page 4 too. What, mine's on this side, yours is on that side. I don't know if that
It's
matters.
same,
Okay.
it's same. But that's your page 4? Yeah,
Yeah.
the page numbers are same.
Okay.
So general government is the general government that you see here.
Okay.
Public safety is the public safety you see here.
I see.
Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yep.
Next time, make me do the PowerPoint the same as theirs.
No, it's fine.
I kept the old one
Alright.
because I had handwritten notes all over it. Never occurred to me our page numbers would be different. So what are those page numbers?
That was on page 7.
It's on page 7?
Yeah,
Does there need to be a clarification of that anywhere?
it says page 4. I mean, it says page 7 on the column.
Oh, okay. Does that help, Mr. Kane?
It does.
Okay, sorry for that
That's
confusion
okay.
there.
One of the things that
Go ahead.
is we have continued to grow forward in the amount of building projects that are occurring in here. Is our, I guess our inspection department, our building inspections, is that department growing as well? I know those guys are doing a phenomenal job and they're working themselves to the bone, but, you know, this is one of those departments that I can imagine that needs, growth moving forward, and I didn't see, unless I missed it, a additional employee in there.
Actually, there was no employee request. We did some shifting around of some responsibilities. You will see in that department, however, an increase for professional services. We are still utilizing an outside resource for us to do large and commercial plan developments and that sort of thing, and to do commercial plan reviews. We pay a small percentage to this outside firm, and it frees up the guys to actually go do inspections and not have to do the tedious work of these large plats at the same time. It's been a very harmonious relationship between us and the outside agency, the third party. One of the other things that we have started doing is allowing these large developers and structures, if they want to pay for that third party, they're welcome to. We still have every requirement we have to. But if they want to supply their own third party, and if time is of the essence for them, or if they want a certain engineer to review certain things, we've kind of re-strategized on how we're doing things in there. Now, that's not to say I won't come back to you in 6 months. I mean, they all seemed alive and fine today when I saw them. I actually cut up with one of them for just a minute this afternoon. He seemed to be in good spirits. But I think by shifting some of the responsibility for the amount of documentation and the processing that has to be done on the front end, I mean, they're all trained inspectors. That's what they like to do. They like to go out, they like to inspect, they like to look at footings, they like to look at wires, and they like to look at houses. They do not like to read books this thick on specs for a building. So once we've allowed that third party to come in, and there is a minor increase, I think it's $50,000 extra I put in there. And I don't anticipate that we'll need all that, but if we have another very large development come in, if there's one thing that we did learn last summer from Project Epic, is that when we do need help, we ought to have the ability to call for it.
They do a phenomenal job. I hear nothing but wonderful things from builders and everything like that. I know as we see fees and everything go up, but I'm glad to see something built in for assistance of that, so we make sure to keep that on pace. But I haven't heard anything about the time issues that we had on there, and so they obviously doing a great job. So props to them. I just want to make sure that we're funding, especially that one with the growth that we're seeing in Oconee County, and
Yes.
as we've continually gone through the growth that we're seeing is exactly what we've been trying to look forward to. So the growth of a meal has continually gone up. I was trying to remember what page, 3 of 88. From, obviously, we're still waiting on 2020 actual number on there. We expect that to probably be higher than 537. See the estimated meal for 2021 to be 548, which was an estimated 10,000 additional from what we estimated to be last. So that's exactly what we hope to see, what our citizens want to see, because that continue to keeps our taxation low. So I'm glad to see people want to move to Oconee County. And as we got some industry coming online too, that's good news.
Okay, any other questions or comments? If not, is there a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion.
Second.